Hi, this is Derek at Boise Cylinder Head Services. We're going to be grinding some valves today on our quick-way valve grinder. The valves that we're grinding came out of a Subaru Outback 2008 VVT cylinder head. These are a whole bunch of those cylinder heads, and we got 8 of the valves right now that are carbon covered, dirty, grimy. I don't know if they're any good. I mean, they look decent, but we'll grind them and verify. So what we're going to do first is we're going to take it over to our glass bead machine, and we're going to blast all this carbon off and try not to hit the stem much because we don't want any wear on the stem. Then we are going to take it over to our valve grinder, grind the 45-degree angle on the valve, and then also grind the tip of the valve to clean it all up. Then we'll do a full inspection on them and deem whether they're worthy to reuse. All right, let's go to the glass beater. We'll glass bead these up. It's our glass bead machine. We're just going to pop our valves in there, turn our machine on. It's going to get a little noisy, so we'll probably play some music or something. All right, here we go. Alright, now we're going to collect our valves from there. We'll take them out back, blow the glass bead out of them. We don't want any glass bead getting in our machine. We'll put sprayer water. Blow it off so it don't rust. Now we'll take them in and we'll use our valve grinder. So this is the stone where we're going to be grinding the 45, and on the other end we're going to grind the tip of the valve. Alright, so this is our chuck right here, and we're going to put the valve into there using this button here. We're going to activate the air chuck and put this valve in, Always remember to put on your safety equipment before using machines or operating machines. Right here, to push that valve into place. We already got our angle set at 45 degrees, which is where we want it for this particular engine. And then we are going to turn on the machine and make sure our fluid is running. There we are. We need this fluid there to cool the valve and to kick any debris out of our stone. And then we're just going to move our stone over and drag our valve back. You should be able to see the 45-degree angle of the valve start cleaning up. I can hear it contacting. We just move the stone back and forth as we drag our valve onto the stone. We're just looking for all the marks and debris, any kind of pits to disappear off the face of the 45-degree angle. Then once we think we have it, we'll back the machine off and pop the valve out and do an inspection. Make sure it's looking crisp. So I'll usually wipe off the oil and check our finish. We'll drag our nail across it. Honestly, this finish is looking a little rough. I'm gonna have to true up our stone. Our stone must be a little dull. So we'll do that next. We have a little diamond here that we can move forward or backwards till it contacts the stone, and then we'll just true up the face of that grinding stone. So I'll do that here real quick. We're gonna flush our stone in case there's any debris caught in it there. We feel it a little bit, just make sure all the debris is gone. Be real careful, you don't want your finger to jam into that thing, it'll take your skin right off. Alrighty, now we should get a nice sweet finish. I'm gonna touch that valve again just to make sure it's up to par. Wipe that oil off and check our finish here. Ah, yeah, much better. I usually drag my fingernail across it to try and hear if it's making any kind of scratchy noise. You can also look at it. It looks really smooth. And that's, minus the oil that's on there, is a really good look for a valve. So I'm going to go ahead and grind the other 8 of these valves, and then we'll move on to the next step of the process, which is grinding the tip of the valve on the other end of the machine. What happens if you get it in there crooked. We can see that there's a black ring on that valve, and that's where the seat valve contact has been on this particular valve. And over, 50,000, 100,000 miles, that just makes an imprint in the valve. And over time, it causes you to lose your seal in your valve to seat contact area, which is pretty much one of the major reasons we rebuild cylinder heads. It's a major reason for loss of compression in your cylinders. And this one here, I don't know how well you can see that there's pits inside the 45-degree angle. This valve has been worn out a lot more than the others. So we got to be careful. There's a margin right here, and we wouldn't want that to be like a knife's edge, or even half that width would be a risky valve to use. So we'll check that as well on all the valves before we approve them. That's all for the exhaust valves ground, and now we just got the 4 intakes left to do. They're a little bit bigger head diameter, so we have to back it off a little bit more so you don't ram the side of your stone into the valve. These ones tend to take a lot less wear, so it should clean up a lot quicker. Kind of contacting one side way more than the other, and that's due to a little bit of heat warpage on the valve. If it cleans up within 3 to 8 thousandths, it's usually all right, as long as that margin we talked about earlier is fine. That one there seems to have a spot that's not clean enough like the rest of them. If you look right here, you can see it goes from shiny to dull. On about half the valve, it's not contacting, and that's probably from heat warp. If it was more extreme, I'd say it would be due to a bent valve. This one's more than likely heat warped. Either way, we're not going to continue grinding this valve because it's too far off from side to side. We're going to wear a lot more, have a thinner margin, and a wider 45 on this side before we even start to touch that side. So I'm going to condemn this valve. We're going to toss it in our recyclable bucket, and we're not going to reuse that. We got one more intake valve, and then we'll move on to grinding the tips of the valves. Another thing when grinding valves is we can control the rotation speed of these valves, how fast it's rotating around. And that, depending on how big your valve is, you want to go slower rotation speed so you can get a nice clean finish. So on the intake valves, we took about 3 to 5 thousandths off each valve. The exhaust, probably about 4 to 8 roughly, which is fine as long as our margin's sufficient on each one of these valves, which I don't see any issues with any of these. No pits in the surface. That's what we want to see to reuse a valve. So next we're going to use this side of the station. We'll let me throw this one in our recycle bucket here. We're not going to be using that one. So this is where we grind the tips of our valves right here. A lot of the times it's probably unnecessary, but we just like to make every valve as close to new as we can when we're rebuilding a cylinder head. Let's see. I'm going to set this valve in here, and we got a stopper that stops this valve right here. So we just push this valve in this groove all the way up to that, and then we can tighten it in place. And then we'll bring this stone up to touch that valve. See if I can turn our light around here. There we are. There we are. So just to where that stone barely touches the valve there. And then I'm going to use these two little locking mechanisms right here to lock our stone fixture in place. And hopefully that'll take maybe 1/1000th off the tip of the valve. Let's turn it on. We'll start grinding the tips of these valves. I'm going to flush this. You can see the gray coloration on the stone. That's from grinding valves before and a lot of material getting stuck in there. I'm just going to flush that out. You can see how it turns nice and clean blue. That's what we want to see. If we leave all that material in there, it'll leave a burn mark on the end of the valves and it'll mess with the tempering of the steel and cause a weak spot that we don't want. I usually drop my fluid right about the edge of the stone there so that the valve can pass through it before and after. And that probably took about 1/1000th off of it. You can see the valve here, tip. It's really shiny. You can see the grinding marks from the stone. Not maybe, it's a little bright. Anyways, it's nice and clean. It's really shiny. That's what we want, super flat. So it's going to work ideally for contacting that rocker adjuster screw. So I'm just going to do that to the rest of these real quick. Then we'll have a full set of valves, well, minus the one. We'll have to find either a new valve or find another used valve we can grind. Luckily we have a lot of used valves for the build we're doing right now. So I'll just use a different used valve for this rebuild. Alrighty, so we got 7 out of the 8 valves that we needed to grind for this rebuild ready to go. The margins are fine, the 45-degree angles nice and smooth. Tips of the valves cleaned up with minimal grinding. Another thing to check would be stem wear. These valves don't really take a lot of stem wear, but bigger diameter stems will wear a lot more than these ones. Alright, these are going to be the valves we use for one of our rebuilds. And that's all we got on valve grinding today. Thank you for watching our videos. Go ahead and subscribe and hit the bell notification button so you get all our videos notified. And like all our shows if you liked them. And remember, it's all in your head. Thank you and have a good day.